In this video, we'll talk about the daily and weekly price action of Tesla. I know everyone loves to hate it. We'll talk about the long and short dated options interest, and we'll touch on some Tesla news. There's always stuff going on for Tesla, and we'll check that out. Long story short, still a core position in my portfolio and expecting big things 2026, 2027. But I wouldn't get too excited about 2025 price action if I was you. But let's get into it. The chart for Tesla looks really good. We've got this nice volume shelf forming here between kind of 414 and 440. That gives us a really nice foundation. If earnings is good and people perceive them positively, we could definitely launch from that, especially with the RSI having cooled a little bit. MACDX Plus looks good. The long-term holders are still in it, and the BX Trender also looks good. Looks like it kind of wants to flip green, so that excites me. Now, I have switched this indicator from the bank flow indicator. They show roughly the same thing, except this one's kind of pegged to a zero line, so it's easier to see the undulations, so it makes kind of swing trading a bit easier on this one. The other indicator, the black cap fund flow, that shows basing patterns easier. When you get the gold bars on that, I talk about it all the time, the triple gold bar is a really good place to sizing heavily to a position that you're bullish on. But price in the market has started to get elevated, so there's not a whole lot of basing patterns out there, so it makes the indicator kind of redundant. So we've moved to a more volatility based one, so we can trade a little bit easier. Just gives a little bit more insight. I use this indicator more on my futures trading on the MNQ or the mini, so it's been quite useful on that one. So I'm putting it on this chart to help me with this, testing it a little bit. Support below, we've got 418, we mentioned already, and 400, which is also a psychological level as well as a historical area. So we've got the fib, we've got the historical level. Aside from that, we've got this really big air gap. If we do blow past this, I would expect to see 360 again. That would be absolutely delightful for me, because it would allow me the opportunity to size back into Tesla after I think I'll be moving from crypto. The crypto cycle has changed, so my plan at the start of the year no longer applies to crypto, purely because the 4-year cycle has changed. I don't know if it's necessarily dead. It could just be running later than normal, institutions keeping it less volatile, arguably more boring, although the way people cry every time it goes down 5%, you wouldn't believe that. But anyway, back on Tesla, to the upside, we've got that resistance level at 481. I don't think that's going to be major resistance. I think that probably lines up with the expected move for earnings. But we'll take a look at the options market as well. Above that, measured move completion for this breakout, which I would expect to see maybe towards the end of this year, 580. And that's going to give us a little bit of resistance. Above that, 640. Apologies, I'm really out of breath today. I don't know why. I think my asthma's playing it up a little bit. But then above that, we're kind of looking at $1,000 area. Now, that might seem insane. There's some news to talk about in the Tesla section. This is probably going to be more towards 2030, I would imagine. But it's certainly not something we're expecting in the last 2 months of this year. So bear that in mind. Let's look at the weekly charts. Get rid of this, actually. Move that over a little bit. So, you can see our target's a little bit better here. I did initially want to trim on the red trend line. Probably not going to do that now, because price has been not as exciting to trade lately. I don't know if we're going to get a decent rejection off that, because it's kind of wick based. We could be, so just to explain that, let me just move this down a bit. We could be at that already. I probably shouldn't have based that on the wicks, because that's just very bad technical analysis on my part. Pardon me. But yeah, all looks good. Very volatile. Love it. And you can see a little bit easier with this BX Trender. On the weekly chart, it's been pretty good idea to sell around where this goes red. Let's look at the options market then on this one. So 500 still solid resistance that I think has been in play for a while. Historically speaking, we've been chopping around the level for a while. Market makers haven't wanted to let it go above that. It makes sense, but it's a little bit higher than the 480 we're looking at. Pre-market is on already. Nice. Support market makers have done a good job keeping it above that one. So there's not a lot of interest for earnings for this to go down a lot. The expected move is actually quite small on this one, but it does line up with 480. We said when we looked at the chart, this is probably where people are going to be putting their strikes and stuff, which is true. So in the next section, we'll talk a little bit about kind of some market cap size expectations for Tesla in 2030. But just out of curiosity, let's see what the market in general is thinking for that. So let's go 2027 January. Not a whole lot of shorting going on here, guys. But look, just lately we are seeing a lot of long-term leap volume coming in for really high levels. Okay, if we keep pushing out, keeps coming. Now, some of the hedging for Tesla. Yes, there is a lot of volume on some of them, but having looked at some of the pricing around this, it's very attractive for hedging. So it's hard to really know if it's a lot of people being bearish or it is hedging just in case something blows up in the economy. If that's the case, this would be a really good hedge because companies like this normally get hit pretty hard. But let's put it out as far as we can go. So January 2028. Let it think about what it's doing for a while. Let me just move these out of the way so you can kind of see the levels. So a lot of people are going to be sitting in the money for a while on this one. If they choose to close. But again, a lot of volume here. This doesn't look bearish at all for the long-term picture on Tesla. Okay, let's look at the news then. So for Tesla, I've got a few news bits here. We've obviously got the standard Fintel chart on there that tells us that institutions still really like this one. They're still sizing into it and holding. The other news bits, we've got the FSD tick up. Would like to see that in earnings. That could give us a nice margin expansion. Now, I don't necessarily think that's going to translate to Q4 because with the removal of the tax credits, there could be some offsetting there. But the main thing is, if we see it expand this time, it could offset that drop next time. So that'd be nice to see. So that's something to keep an eye out in earnings later. Launching in Africa, I'm sure there'll be some questions about that in the call. Other than that, though, Tom Nash put out a good video. I think it was fairly short, about 20 minutes. If you're around and you've got time, go check that out. Now, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of his timelines on a lot of these things, but the numbers, I'm very excited about them. And his energy numbers do line up fairly well with what I'm expecting over the next 5 years for Tesla, which is to say that no one else is talking about why energy is going to be so important. And if anyone's looked at my portfolio lately, I've certainly got a focus on energy. I'm really bullish on LNG, which is scaling out massively in the US. And Tesla is my battery play. I do have a little bit of a battery tech in my Innovix position, but it's very small. That's a very baby company to be dealing with. But very helpfully didn't put the numbers on there that Tom Nash talked about, but energies by 2030 expecting about 100 billion in revenue. He's estimating a gross margin of about 25%. I'm thinking a little bit more, but we'll see. And he's also pricing in an expectation of 25% of the market going to Tesla. I actually think that's fairly modest as well, given the manufacturing capability of Tesla over every other competitor. But, there is the possibility that Tesla is juggling a lot of balls at that point, so they might not be as focused on that one. But for now, they're certainly scaling up as fast as they can. So I've got terrible handwriting. I don't know, anyone that works on computers, your handwriting goes to absolute garbage after several years. So roughly right now, the 2024 revenue is under 98 billion. This could add an additional 100 billion of revenue by 2030. Now, there's no point in getting in the nitty-gritty of the maths. You can work that out for yourself. I think Tom Nash does provide a lot of the inner workings for those numbers, and I think they're pretty modest as well, especially on the margins on that one, if they're going to have a lot of pricing power. But also, other than that, though, he does point out the robotics numbers. I think I put that on the page there, would add an additional 300 billion to the valuation. Now, I think that's quite bullish for the robotics. I'm expecting them a little bit later. I'm expecting them to focus on the robo-taxi before then. So I don't necessarily take the timelines as what I'm trying to indicate here. Mainly, I'm just trying to say that Tesla's got a lot of things coming for them. And if you break each individual part down and what that could add to market cap, it's actually quite terrifying, really. I think in Tom Nash's video, he talks about hitting 5 trillion with just robotics, robotaxi, and energy. That doesn't include any of the AI training, the OEM stuff, the FSD subscriptions, the trucking. You know, it's wild. And a lot of people are saying Tesla is going to get really overvalued here, which is true. But what I really wanted to hammer home was this is hyper growth. This is a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. It's hard to price as a value play, which is how a lot of people still look at Tesla when they're saying it's overvalued. Yes, it absolutely is overvalued, but will it be in 2030 when all this is delivered? And price always front runs. A lot of people don't seem to be able to comprehend that. So think of companies like Palantir, Robinhood, companies that people said they can never achieve the things that they're setting out to do. And they have, but also price really, really gets ahead of itself. Tesla's done it historically before where prices got ridiculously overpriced. You want to be trimming into that, I'm not saying, but right now, Tesla needs to execute on its plan, and then you need to be able to recognize when it's time to roll over on that one. Is it now? No. Now's the time to be leaning into it. Sorry, my dog is getting a bit annoying. So yeah, I mean, if Tom Nash is right on his numbers, what did he say? Additional 5 trillion. The price of Tesla right now, market cap wise, is 1.5 trillion. With I think that works out 20x earnings, something like that. But yeah, the price of Tesla right now is absolutely going to front run that. That's 5 years away, and that nearly triples the size of the business to where it is now. So Tesla absolutely can grow into those numbers relatively easily. That's what it's being priced for. Hopefully I've portrayed that quite well. I'll probably not. I'll probably chat an absolute waffle, but if you have any questions, let me know. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, whoever. I'll see you next time.